months to go through, let's call it quality control, but they call it safety and alignment. And even that stuff is getting less and less rigorous at this point. Safety is a big concern. So OpenAI is really in the cat's seat right now. Their first mover advantage with ChatGPT, especially version 3 or 3.5, is probably what put them in such an advantageous position strategically. So I think that Stargate, having it be canonized into our budget, into our infrastructure in the United States, is the right thing to do. I don't disagree with it, by the way. It's better that we have it contained in the US than to have China and other hostile, entities become the world dominating thing. And despite some opinions otherwise, there's no way that China has the kind of technology and the infrastructure and even the capital, one could argue, because like Pete was saying, their economy is just a disaster right now. So I think that they talk a big game, and DeepSeek is something we could talk about in just a bit, but I don't think that they can compete head on with the United States in terms of AI. All the research is here. Silicon Valley is here. All the data centers and power infrastructure, the regulatory environment is here. So I think that, we'll see this cookie cutter thing. This will become the model. And I think the build out is going to include, what was it, Patrick? 10 of these data centers now in Arizona?
Well, yeah.
There's
Texas
just one,
first.
but I think there was, oh yeah, you're right. It was Texas first. Yeah, you're right. And then there's, there's all kinds of stuff coming after that. I looked at the campus image from overhead, and people are making these claims like the campus actually looks like a snake that's intertwined. That's a very interesting observation, but we'll have to see.
Are you talking about the OpenAI campus that they talked about at the Stargate launch?
Yeah. It's very, very suspicious, to say the least.
There's one aspect of this is that there probably is going to be, this will be a public-private partnership with the United States, aside from this the private money that's going to be injected into the partnership. However, Trump was very careful to say that the problem with the data centers at this point is energy. They don't have the energy to power these data centers. That's absolutely clear at this point. And short of a miracle, somehow of God, they're not going to have the energy to operate all these things. So Trump pledged in that press conference that he was going to wipe out or wipe away all the regulations that are standing in the way for these data centers to develop their own power sources. That means many regulations are going to be wiped away for instance, nuclear power, probably natural gas, maybe even coal as well. And they're also apparently setting up a separate power grid, not our power grid that you draw power for your house, your business, et cetera. They're able now to set up a separate power grid that can only be fed from their sources. That means they're going to have their power. We have our power. We're never going to see any of that excess power generated by these other plants.
They can ingest it though, Patrick, but they won't put it out.
Well, exactly.
Yeah. So the fault tolerant part would be that they still have a connection to the grid, but it's only used when their systems are offline, potentially.
Right. So let me play. I hate to use the term devil's advocate when we're talking about this, but let me play devil's advocate. So given the power needs that these data centers are going to need, and look, we live in a place where there's already very high level discussions in Ohio state government about what we're going to do just with the data centers being built here locally in the Columbus area. And I mean, they're all over the place. I mean, Amazon, we drove out by there recently, and we'd been by there, but it's kind of shocking that Amazon's spending $18 billion in construction. I mean, I think that's way beyond what it costs to build the biggest building in the world. So they're building that's just what they're investing here in Ohio, out in New Albany. And Facebook is in the billions, Google's at about $8 or $9 or $10 billion so far.
So is Microsoft.
Right. And so the concern that this is just locally. So the concern is that these data centers are going to suck up all the power on the grid. So we, and so, I mean, is it a bad thing then that they're setting up their own grid? I mean,
no, they'll use small reactors. So they'll develop very quickly. They'll have to do it. So instead of these massive nuclear plants that you normally see, they're identifiable by their cooling towers that are convex. They shape like this. And they have to be near a water source, which is why, you only see those things. There's a Diablo Canyon one that's over north of San Diego, if I remember. So they're very powerful, but they need the little ones now. They need these little, I would say they're scaled down models. And with today's technology, especially of regulatory environment clear. So the reason why nuclear went dead to begin with is because it was costing more and more regulatory wise. It was taking 5 to 10 years to build it. And then they were billions of dollars back I don't know when the last reactor was even built, at least 20 years ago, probably. So it was very, very expensive because of all the regulations. Now, if Trump's going to flatten that, then we could see, quite a bit of innovation in nuclear. These little things that can be on a truck and they just put it down and it's fired up and it's working. It would be kind of like the nuclear power systems that are in subs. Not that I'm an expert, but military ships have nuclear power. They're small reactors. And I don't know how many megawatts or gigawatts they put out, but that's just a matter of scale. We know how to do this. So I don't know that it's as big a deal as, it should be. But the biggest thing that I see with Stargate is actually the most revelatory piece to me. And you have to think about this for a second. Technocracy is live and well right now. Think about what they just did. We have the US government participating in an AI infrastructure system. Just let that sink in. And now we have Elon and his team, at the Department of the Treasury, using AI to query for, payments that are not in the best interest of the American people, as they put it. And I think that the biggest thing that I see with the AI that Elon is doing there is I've thought very carefully about this. What is the best way, let's pose this as a question, to get AI into our governmental system? And the answer to that is, in my opinion, after a lot of thinking, to demonstrate the positive benefits of AI. And so what did they do? They planned, I think, in my opinion, take with a grain of salt, that the lowest hanging fruit in the governmental system was the most corrupt organization that we all they would know about. All right, we don't know all that, but they did, certainly. And so as I see this narrative now, that isn't AI great, and these young men that are sitting there, are having fabulous results with all this. And the use case, after Elon just spoke at in the Oval Room about what's going on there and the transparency thereof, is what they're hearing in mainstream news at a ninth grade level is AI is good. Look at what it did. And I think it's very powerful, no doubt about it. But I think what's going to happen is it's going to drift out of the US Department of Treasury into other areas of the government. And by the way, once you get an AI infrastructure into a place, you're never going to get it out of that place again. So I think slowly but surely we are seeing our government commingling with these advanced large language models and the AI infrastructure. This is technocracy. I mean, Patrick, I give you so much credit for having the calling, because I think the Lord prompted you to do all this years and years and years ago to begin laying the foundation for technocracy and merging this with contemporary architecture and computers and things like that today, because you are coming into the prime part of where we are on the prophetic timeline. It's just stunning to see the technocracy stuff actually there. We have business and AI running certain aspects of our country.
Exactly.
You cannot make this up. I wish Tom were listening right now. So it's just just unbelievable to me.
So I'm watching Stargate, and everybody gets their, for lack of a better term, their panties in a bunch. And, this proves that Trump is whatever conclusion anybody wants to draw about Trump, from the AC to, anything else in between, to the greatest president ever. But I guess my question is, as I viewed the Stargate proposal, it wasn't really, at least at that time, Patrick, what you referred to a public-private partnership. It was going to be privately financed, but Trump was going to remove the regulations with regard to development of power plants. And by the way, 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, Microsoft announced that it was training its AI on all of the nuclear regulations that existed to shorten the time frame from concept to actually building a power plant. Now, I don't know that they've built any yet. In the meantime, while that's going on, China is opening 2 coal-burning power plants a week. And how do we compete? So the practical question is, are we ever going to slow this down? How are you going to put the brakes on it? Can you put the brakes on it? And don't we want, if we're, in an economy in the world, don't we want to compete on it? Maybe Pete could weigh in on that, and then we'll go to Patrick.
Yeah, I think we're from a military standpoint, we are very much in a fourth industrial revolution, and how that would equate to the military side would be a revolution in military affairs, a cultural change inside of the Pentagon that is wholly embracing AI, where a few years ago it was still looked at as kind of like weird or fringe. I mean, since I came in 2002 and I got out in 2020, and I saw a huge change in how we looked at technology, even down at the lower echelons. I'm not talking about the tier 1 units like special forces or Delta or any of those guys, but just the normal units. And I think that there is going to be such a marked advantage for the units that have this in the form of like an AI agent. Like, so if I'm a commander and I have this personal assistant that's on my wristwatch or whatever, and anytime I need real-time information, or I need real time connection with anything, I can just simply talk to my agent. My agent is going to get that data for me, or you can call ahead and say, hey, I need you to prepare this brief and I need it to go. And that's how reliant that we'll become upon this from a tactical standpoint. As far as the strategic standpoint, I think that the Pentagon is going to embrace, they have, going back to 2005, I think was the simulated world that they created through, I think it was Purdue University. One of the universities had this kind of this Sim City version of the world, and it was based upon, the avatars were based upon our electronic footprints and digital and fingerprints, and that would be what your AI character, your avatar character, does in the system. And I think that they use that, and that's been developing. I mean, that started in 2005. It's got to be still in use because they can use that thing to war game against for every kind of scenario possible. And it would be a great planning tool for them to use that. And at the same time, we're kind of moving out of, if you think about the fourth industrial revolution, and what that really means is we're moving out of a time where you had a monolithic kind of, an F-35 or an Abrams tank, and you spent years and years and years developing this piece of equipment. And by the time it actually gets rolled out, the technology's jumped ahead like 3 or 4 times. And so you're already behind the curve. That happened with the Abrams. That's happened with the F-35 and basically every other kind of piece of technology we want to roll out that goes through these decades longs worth of innovation. And how much easier is it going to be for them to simply create small drones and then use swarming technology and all that, because now the AI is caught up with the technology, in the sense that we can now marry these things together and they can actually function together without somebody behind the joystick. But between that and just the information processing, I mean, we are any commander, any unit in the world is going to have this going forward. And it would be very much the same effects if we go into the next war like we went into the last one. It would be just like those North Korean soldiers in Ukraine who are basically dumped in the eastern front of Ukraine and said, hey, the Russians tell them go fight. They don't even know how to react to drones. They didn't even know what drones were. Like, it was just like they're looking at them. They have no idea what this thing's about to kill them. And we are going to we're going to have to embrace this industrial revolution, because if we don't, we know our enemies are. And I think that's exactly what Stargate's all about. It's about keeping the edge with the United States. And that edge is going to definitely be sharpened and applied and you can guarantee it's going to be applied in military facets. I mean, it's going to have to, because we would be so far behind even smaller and weaker countries if we don't, build this technology into the troops and into the formations now, rather than waiting till after the fact. You have 20 countries right now that are actively trying to develop artificial intelligence as of 2024. And then you have 30 countries actively trying to develop AI, and you have 20 countries actively trying to develop quantum technology. So, those two will eventually get married together, and then that would be part of some broader system that's going to be almost inescapable. Well, we know that system is the kingdom of the beast that's coming. So, but yeah, it's absolutely going to be. And I hate that I'm not trying to hog the Starlight. If you think about Karl Clausewitz, the Prussian war philosopher who wrote the seminal book on war, he had a pretty famous quote in there that gets used and misused over time. Basically, he said that war was a continuation of politics by other means, and so now we are in the other means part, and that's that technology, and that technology is far outpacing the politics behind it. And so what we're seeing Trump and these guys doing now is moving at about the pace that everything should be moving at. Everybody else is still kind of antiquated back in the 1800s, and the politics are not going to be able to catch up with how fast things are moving.
Pete, one thing that you said is super important when you talked about adoption and almost built-in obsolescence by the time something is ready for production and approved for use.
Yeah.
Case in point, I just watched a mini documentary on the new laser system that's been mounted on some of our battleships. And here first of all, where we heard about this laser stuff really for me was back with Israel. I mean, Israel's developing this stuff too. But I didn't realize that we were also, productionable at this point with these tests. There's two of them, only two. And I was thinking, oh, that's good. It's good that we can do that because they specifically talked about taking down or lasing missiles and drones and things like that. But get this, then my heart sank when I realized this is the obsolete part of it. And I wish Britt could comment on this right now, but it's like, wait a minute. They said it takes up to 10 seconds for there to be enough thermal energy put into the skin of whatever that thing is, like the metal casing around a missile or the drone itself, or they even talked about melting the drone's plastic propellers or carbon fiber things. And it would just fall out of the sky because of that. So you don't have to deform the body. You can actually, when it comes to a normal drone, you could actually go after the propeller system. And I realized, wait a minute, let's do the math here. So anybody else get it? So you could do maximally 10 destructive events per minute. And if you have a hive mind AI autonomous swarm of any size, 100, 1,000, whatever it is, Britt would say 1 million at a time to take down a battleship. A laser is not going to do it. It's just it's so far off the mark that it's just it's very sobering.
What do you wait? Say that again. You mean that the AI, the laser can't handle it?
Yeah, it's great. Okay, but if it takes 10 seconds, John, do the math. 10 seconds per item that it's trying to destroy. That is 10 per minute. Okay, so if you've got hundreds of swarm, drones coming to you, you can't laze them. And so that's the problem. I mean, it's old. You can't, even that is old. And they only have
but they
two
did
of these
it
devices.
in Star Wars, Scott. No, I agree with you. I mean, that's been the limitation why Israel hasn't rolled out its Iron Beam yet, because while it's way cheaper, it's logistically limited in the scope of the geography and number of enemy things coming in. So you have one laser coming from one laser machine, but it can't take out 10,000 drones. I mean,
that's the point.
I don't know if you guys saw the New Year's Eve things that took place in different places, especially one I think in Shanghai, China, where they had, I don't know, 15 or 20,000 drones doing these designs in the sky. But if they could do designs in the sky like that to, make a pretty picture, they can also come at you with a lot of different things. And Ukraine has done quite well developing drones, using drones against a much bigger army. And eventually they run out of road, I think, but they're doing a pretty good job. I mean, there's a slaughter going on in Ukraine and has been for 2 years.
Yeah.
So anyway,
footage of that, it's really disappointing to see it. Yeah.
So I guess my question is, so let's go back to Trump and kind of focus in on him and the Trump administration and Stargate. Did what we saw the day after the inauguration a really, really bad thing. What do you think, Patrick?
DeepSeek, you mean?
No,
Yeah.
I'm talking about the Stargate, the Project Stargate
Okay.
rollout. We'll
Yeah.
get to DeepSeek in a moment.
Yeah. My perception at this point is that technocracy, the movement, and the practitioners, the technocrats, they're making their move right now. They've been hidden for so many years from the public view. Elon Musk maybe is the only one who's been raising his head when he bought X, Twitter. But they've been building their infrastructure for at least 30 years at this point, and they've avoided the limelight at all costs. But now, I predicted this in my first book, Technocracy Rising. There would be a time when they figured all the requirements have been met, the infrastructure is complete, and it's a time for them to basically attack and say game over. I think we're at that point right now. I hate to say that. Okay, I'll give you a 20% chance that I'm wrong at this point. I just leave a little room for,
Okay, so
for
Patrick,
hopium, right?
What do you mean by quote, it's over, unquote?
When you
I
have,
could take that a number of different ways.
oh yeah, I know. When you have this group of technocrats, arch technocrats swarming around the White House, people like Mark Andreessen, Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, David Sachs, etc. This class of people has never been in the public eye before, but they are now. They're asserting themselves, taking over positions of visibility in our government. I would suggest that they have another idea in their mind with their own language, perhaps, but they have another idea about what they're going to do with our government at this point. And with AI as at the pinnacle of their achievement, the technocrat achievement, AI is powerful enough now to take over our government and wreak havoc on our constitutional republic. And that's the threat that I've been warning for at least 15 years at this point, that the threat against us will not come from communism, fascism, socialism, or anything other isms, but rather from technocracy. So at this point, we see the attack against our institution of the government. The end result is going to be that AI is going to set its claws into our government processes. Like you said, there's going to be no way to get rid of it once it's in there. I think that's been the plan from the get-go when Elon Musk first suggested that we could do this business of Doge to scrape out all of the rot of government. We know it's there. I mean,
That's
I'm
the
not saying
cover
it's not.
story, don't you think, Patrick?
Exactly. That it was. And so, but we're all glad that we see us now. But the danger is when they expand their scope to the whole government, you're going to have a picture develop that's not going to be friendly to our government, because everybody's going to see, guys, we totally blew it, and there's no way to go back, and there's no way to keep anything accountable moving forward except for AI be in charge of everything. I think this is the threat. I think this is the reason that Elon Musk and his cronies have surfaced at this point to say AI is basically going to take over your country, and out with the politicians, out with the regulations. And by the way, Trump said, and the rest of them have said, Elon Musk has said, Sam Altman said the same thing. They want the government to deregulate the AI industry. Mark Andreessen, the nutcake that he is, he said himself, the only way for human progress to take place is to deregulate every aspect of the technology industry. Crazy stuff. But this is what they believe at this point. So they're asking Trump, deregulate everything in sight, get your hands off of us. We'll handle everything for you. Trust us, whatever. So this is kind of why I say technocracy's day may be upon us.
And you know what? After listening to the 16-minute or so speech from J.D. Vance,
Yes.
well, I'll tell you,
Scott, why don't
read
you-
from the script. I mean, it was unbelievable. That's
Yes.
exactly what he said. Trust us. Let the U.S. do it. We invite you to partner with us. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Our
Yeah, I
audience
mean,
may not-
why don't you? So JD Vance spoke at a AI conference in Europe. I think it was in, I don't know where it was, Paris
In
or
France.
It's in France, yeah.
Of course, that's kind of ironic, isn't it, Patrick, with all of the technocracy stuff that kind of emanated from there back in the French Revolution and the Jacobins and all that, and the beheadings that accompanied all that. That's kind of that's kind of now I'm not going to sleep tonight. So anyway, so Scott, why don't you had sort of summarized JD Vance's speech, because I think it's a pretty important speech.
It's very important. And by the way, he's a remarkable man. He's very articulate, and it goes beyond just reading from a teleprompter, which he was doing. But I think just overall, his presence of mind, he's very quick thinking, and there's a lot to admire there. And he also projects a certain amount of strength in his demeanor, in the way that he is. So when he stood there looking at all these other people and saying basically that, we are going to be the world leader in this thing. You do not want, what did he call it, guys? Hostile, or he was basically naming China and Russia as the antagonists. You do not want them to have this. This is a very serious threat to the West, and you need to wake up, because one of the problems that's happening, here's the use case that he was speaking to, is that Europe has more regulatory framework around personal information than anywhere else in the world, as far as I know. So it's the GDPR, can't remember what it stands for offhand, but it's a regulation that protects privacy and with European citizens, okay? And JD Vance makes the case, you guys are going to slide off into history. You are not, if you do not get your act together, basically, let me just paraphrase it, you're going to have a problem. And I think he's absolutely right about that. You can't put all this GDPR stuff in there and expect large scale adoption of AI, which all of their banking systems and everything else needs there. So, I mean, it was a powerful statement. And then he puts the stake in the ground and he says, rally to us. I'm paraphrasing. We are doing it. We have the best and the brightest. We're making these big investments, and you need to partner with us. Or if you don't, that's fine. Good luck with that.
Let me
So
just
that
share.
was the gist of it.
Scott, you pulled out some quotes, so let me just give a few of those quotes. AI's transformative power. He said, AI will have countless revolutionary applications in economic innovation, job creation, national security, healthcare. By the way, I see that healthcare everywhere. The Saudis are opening, by the way, they just signed a $5 billion contract for an AI center at Neom, that big city that they're building. And it's all tied to healthcare. It's a big healthcare, free expression beyond. On regulation, he says, we believe that excessive regulation of the AI sector could kill a transformative industry just as it's taking off. On AI and bias, he said, we feel very strongly that AI must remain free from ideological bias, and that American AI will not be co-opted into a tool for authoritarian censorship. On job impact, AI really believe will facilitate and make people more productive. It is not going to replace human beings. It will never replace human beings. But I would add, a lot of what I'm seeing, I'll just give you one quick example and then I'll turn it back over to you guys. I get ads every day on Facebook and Twitter for legal AI tools. And they are always accompanied by an older guy, like Pete's age, like 50, who's saying, I use AI and I don't need associates anymore. I can deliver quick value to my client. And here's the link, go sign up for it. Your law practice will never be the same. But then what happens to all these young lawyers? And an older lawyer might be able to figure out if AI's messing up. But what happens, so I think JD Vance is a little bit, it's not going maybe to replace them, it'll just render them useless. So anyway,
Just like
discuss among
IRS
yourselves.
agents being repurposed to the border. I just love that, by the way. So it's good.
Which is why you need UBI. You need the universal basic income. That'll come about. So the last crisis we had in 2020, what did that do? It sped up the digitalization of everything by 6 years, according to certain newspapers and journalists that I guess did the research on this. But when you think about that, it also increased the bandwidth because everybody was staying home and they had to get on Zoom and do their work from home, et cetera, et cetera. And then this crisis is going to be the need for inserting AI into all of our federal institutions because of the corruption. And just like we saw with the plane crash back in DC with a helicopter, I think that airlines are going to have to start having like a third co-pilot or something will be this backup for that. And that'll just be part of it'll be wrapped in the safety protocol. And it's just going to permeate every facet of society because everybody could pretty much use it to do what they need to do. And the danger to me is the fact that this is so far advanced in the military realms that we're trying to race ahead of everybody else to get this to remain the superpower. But whoever gets there first is going to be the dominant power. So.
Mhm.
So I just put up an article that I used last Sunday in my update. And by the way, it comes from, I put a link in the comments. It reads like a script from the show 24.
Yes.
About what happened starting at 2 a.m. on January 21st. And it talked about how the people at Treasury were arriving and they were putting the finishing touches on things like, the welcome packages they were going to give to the new people coming in from the Trump administration. And they started arriving at 6 a.m. and it was sort of game over for everything that they'd been doing. And this guy's kind of a new agey kind of guy, so be careful with what he says, but he's a very good writer and he's been writing a new thing every day about this. I mean, and so Patrick, I think your statement that this is coming, they're using AI in there right now. This is being done. And I have to tell you, there's 6 young guys in there with Elon Musk and they're tearing it apart. They have been prepping this the last couple months. Well, I think Trump's been planning this for 4 years, but anyway, what do you guys think?
I definitely think that Trump had, he had the guts basically to think ahead to his first term and to do countermeasures in his strategy in order to be more aligned, let's say, with whatever his ultimate end game is. And I think that the rapid pace of all of his progress so far, which has been less than, I don't even think it's been a month yet, but it's stunning, really. Well, you can't just do that you have to have all that stuff pre-planned with the right people in the right positions and everything. I noticed that Tulsi Gabbard got approved today.
Yeah.
That's
By the way, Scott,
interesting.
it's been 23 days since the
23.
inauguration.
There you go. I don't know if our audience can appreciate this all, but the tech guys on this panel right now are freaking out completely. We cannot absorb it. I don't even know how to ingest it all and to process it all. All the things that are happening right now. It's just truly astonishing.
The speed at which this all took place is amazing, because when Elon Musk heads a project, this has his fingerprints all over it, and I'll tell you why. When he bought the Electrolux plant in Memphis, Tennessee, to house the largest supercomputer facility in the world at that point, he ordered 100,000 chips from NVIDIA. That big one, not the little teeny ones you have in your computer.
I think it's the H100 or H200.
Exactly. This is the latest state-of-the-art big suckers like this, this big. And he ordered 100,000 chips. They delivered it to him in the warehouse. 19 days later, the chairman of NVIDIA appeared on a video press conference, I think, and he declared that Trump somehow pulled it off to assemble that whole mess into a working operational system in 19 days. Never had been done in the history of the world. It knocked the socks off of the chairman of NVIDIA. He couldn't believe it. But nevertheless, he said, this Musk is a miracle worker. Somehow he got it done. He's the master of big. He's a master of showmanship when it comes to putting things together in a special way. We see this type of speed being executed in the government. Nobody had a chance to react to what was happening. It just happened. Boom. All of a sudden, there it is in plain sight and spitting out all the information you can possibly could believe at that point. I'm sure all of us true too, but we probably we can't doubt that all this stuff they brought out was true. But nevertheless, the speed that was so fast that nobody really understood what was going on until they were done with the project.
I was somewhat shocked to find out. We've seen Elon with his Halloween thing where he's got the red leather, chest thing, and he's got the Baphomet on it. But what got my attention was photograph montage of his mother. And she is right out of the, Luciferian elite types. I mean, unbelievable. All the occult symbology stuff being photographed. And if he's coming from her, that probably answers a lot as to where Elon's worldview is, because the guy never sleeps. He's on some kind of a spectrum. He's obviously very brilliant. And there's something about him that just slightly creepy. I don't know if anyone else believes that or not. Pete, what do you think about that?
Well, I mean, it's clear. Trump doesn't sleep either. So,
Yeah.
Well,
I only sleep about 5 hours a night myself, so I kind of get that. But I do think that they are absolutely laying the groundwork. I mean, especially with this Starlink. I mean, if you remember the commercial, I don't know if you saw the commercial, the T-Mobile commercial that aired during the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. The fact that he's got these satellites everywhere around the world, that he's going to provide connectivity anywhere. And the statement in that commercial was that if you can see the sky, you'll have internet. So, I mean, that's anywhere in the world. And if you think back to, I always talk about the tyranny of the present as an idea where we get stuck in what we think technology or the future is going to look like. But we base that on our present day surroundings. And so if you think back to go back and watch after this, go back and watch the very first episode of Lost in Space. And as soon as they land on this planet, the Judy and the daughters are all like hanging their clothes out to dry on and it's very like 1950s, kind of mentality, because that's all they had to base it on. And if you go to the 70s and 80s and you get to Star Wars, you get these ships flying in space and they're shooting these little lasers and everybody's kind of coming in formations and stuff. But then we get to today and everything has become very in not just in warfare, but just how things are the media, all of this it's become very decentralized. And the one project that DARPA's really latched onto in the last few years is this idea of mosaic warfare. And that's how they basically, you attack your enemy in a very decentralized fashion. But now that we have AI, they can always be interconnected, hive mind mentality. They can swarm at key places where they need to. They can use all different levels of technology and all different levels of attacks. And in each individual attack isn't enough to destroy the enemy, but when you compile them all together, it overwhelms all of their systems at the same time. And it sure felt like that to me here in January, or back in January last month in December, where you had the drones that appeared out of nowhere mysteriously, and then you had the orbs, and then you had the thing that happened in Vegas, then the thing in New Orleans, and then you had a number of these plane crashes and the big one in DC. And it just felt like there was so many different things that were disconnected everywhere, but it was happening all the time. And it felt like very, it felt like we were under some kind of mosaic attack, just because it was the variety of so many different things happening.
My understanding is he has about 6,000 or 7,000 Starlink satellites and plans to ramp that up to 42,000.
And don't forget, Amazon's launching soon too, their own satellite system.
Yep.
And they have the opposing rocket company. Is it Blue Origin? Is that right, guys?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, think about it. Here's two of the wealthiest people in the world, that have the space technology and all the infrastructure and everything that they need to, continue to play their role in. I see it as yielding their power to the Antichrist, take a knee, and to give it to the Antichrist eventually. So these are the type of guys that I think are going to be the major players there. That's debatable. That's a speculation, because the 10 toe metaphor right there in the 10 kingdoms, we don't really know. But I think my opinion has been for a couple of years now that they're going to be more technical oligarchs. I noticed that Mondo Gonzalez has begun to take a pretty strong stand on that too, by the way. So it's interesting what's happening.
And who was sitting in the row right behind Trump when he was sworn in? You had between three
there was
guys.
A whole line of them. Yeah.
Right. But there was, the guy from Google's only worth about $2 billion. I think he was the guy who had to go get the coffee. But the other, Zuckerberg, Bezos, and Musk, they're pushing $1 trillion between the three of them. I mean, Musk's net worth has doubled since the election.
Yeah. I can almost guarantee you by the time of this administration is over, there will be at least one trillionaire on the face of the planet. Who it will be, who knows? Maybe Musk. But there's that threshold is going to be met. And by the way, John, maybe I know we're probably scaring some people here. Maybe we should have a hope break, a hope break for just a minute to talk about some positive things, especially from a spiritual point of view. Might be a good thing just to get people off what we're talking about a little bit onto the biblical thing.
Okay, so let's do DeepSeek and then we'll do the hopium part.
Yeah.
I call it the commercial break.
Yeah.
So I've been watching
DeepSeek.
DeepSeek. You're right. We've talked about the fact that when it was released, and this is still just 2 or 3 weeks ago, this is an AI large language model that came out of China. It's not unexpected because DeepSeek has been around. It was run by these mathematician types in a research lab. It is not like a typical AI startup. The background of these men, many of which are PhD, very, very smart people, they were working on machine learning and other things, mostly through Alibaba and their technical team. Think of it like the Amazon of China, AWS, the Amazon Web Services division of Amazon. So they had these models and they were getting better, but no one expected, this R1 model, which had been trained through a distillation process from O1 from OpenAI. And many have said that they actually stole intellectual property, and that what was shocking and sent those kind of like shockwaves in the financial loss, I think you're right, it was about $1 trillion in about 6 hours. It was the fact that they had trained this very comparable and sophisticated model that does chain of thought and self-reflection, prompting and response for just $6 million. And compared to the hundreds of millions of dollars it takes to train AI in the United States, boy, did that send a shockwave through there, because what people were thinking and why it hit the financial markets like that is because they were saying to themselves, well, wait a minute, if there's an open source version of O1, why do you need O1? And furthermore, if you can train it in just weeks at just $6 million, why do we need all the compute infrastructure? And that's why NVIDIA and Broadcom were especially hit by this news, because their future, the net present value of their proposed income stream is very, very big number. So if there's new technology that begins to erode the future value of their pipeline, their sales pipeline, well, that's going to have to be factored into their price, and that's what happened. Because this got everyone's attention so quickly, and because it came out of China, there were people that immediately began probing the model for leaks and what it was doing behind the scenes. And they did discover initially, I wrote a Substack on this, that they found traffic where when you were using the model, it was pinging and sending data back to China through all the work that they were doing. And then certain companies that are hosting DeepSeek as a service, Grok being one of them, there are others, they began to claim, no, trust us, it's locked off, it's okay, it's going to be okay, you can trust us. I don't know if I believe that, honestly. So it was groundbreaking in the sense their algorithms are being studied right now because it's open source, remember. And so I think that what's going to happen very soon, next month maybe, we're going to start to see new algorithms introduced in the training process and in the inference process, so training is how you get data into the large language model. Inference is how it comes out, okay? That process is going to be much faster and cheaper than it used to be. So there are big innovations, and because DeepSeek published it as an open source thing, and you could argue that DeepSeek is the digital equivalent of fentanyl, which also comes out of China and their labs. They deliberately, this is part of their strategy to take down the United States, So it's very dangerous stuff, and it's very disruptive, and people don't really understand still 3 weeks later how this is going to play out right now, but it definitely got people's attention. And my guess is, just to wrap up this point, the first thing that would have happened is Sam Altman would have called 47 and said, this is why we need this in the United States, make it happen. See what I'm saying? This
Totally.
Sure. I mean, it's sort of a
Yeah.
defensive measure. We need to take control of this, and so the one thing that none of us have an idea of is our exit date, or method. We have a couple different ways, but so I mean, what do you do if you're in government and you're planning for the future for your country? I don't know what to do. So let's do this. So we'll come back to DeepSeek, I'm sure. But so Patrick, you suggested giving people some hope as to what's going on. And by the way, I really don't sit around worried that much. I'm sort of concerned about what I should do with these tools that are 30, 40 of them every day I get hit with. So we'll get to that too. But Patrick, how about some hope here for everybody?
Thank you for putting me on the spot.
No pressure.
I had to open my mouth.
We're cheering for you, Patrick. Go ahead. You got it, brother. Go ahead.
I'll tell you what, people need, our listeners need to take, I believe, step back from the chaos and look at the big picture and understand that we're dealing with bits and pieces of a picture that's very scary. We know that the devil is roaring about seeking who he can devour, if not the whole human race at this point. We know that he's doing his thing to thwart the work of God in the earth. From a Christian point of view, if we can understand this from the 100,000 foot view, we'll see our position where we fit into this whole picture. The Bible tells us we're not of this world. We're not part of the kingdom of this world. Do we really understand what that means? What personally? So the Bible tells us very clearly, if you're going to have your heart in the world, or let's say 1 foot in the world and 1 foot in the kingdom of God, you're going to be badly burned and be very disappointed in the end. God says, no, you should take both feet out of the world, live in the kingdom of God first, and then take on the ambassadorship that you have in Christ to be an ambassador to the people around you who don't have a clue what's going on. The world is aching for answers. We have to have answers for them in a way that they can consume it. That's our mission as Christians. That's the only way that we're at this point that we're going to take some people out of the world, if you will, as to become Christians, to explain to them, this is the deal here. We're getting close to the end. It's going to be very, very rough for anybody who seeks to be in the world, to depend on the world for their sustenance, etc. But we have a loving Father who said, we will not be begging bread. If the lilies of the field can be clothed in such splendor, will not he also take care of us? This is the promise. All these promises of God, they apply to us. So, as I look at this, what's going on, I see the parade. We can see the parade from the end and to the beginning. God can see it too. Maybe we don't have this perfect view that he does. For sure we don't, but we should be able to see the end of the parade some time in the future, and we also can see the beginning. It's a continuum. It's going to get worse. Likely, it's going to get much worse in the future. But our hope is not rooted in this in the first place. If your hope is going to be there, well, I can't speak to you, actually. If you want to put your hope in man to solve these issues, it ain't going to happen, ever. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. I think that's the answer for many people today, Christians especially. You need to look up in the New Testament, what does it mean to be an ambassador for Christ and for an ambassador for the kingdom of God? That's your role, I think, at this point in history.
Yeah, that's very well said, Patrick. I love that. I'd like to add a couple things. One is that first of all, I spoke to this issue on my Substack, iamawatchman.substack.com, where I had an article on fear and anxiety. I encourage our audience to see that. I also remember just over a year, maybe a year and a half ago, spending time with Lee Brainerd on the Soothkeep channel, where we talked about the Watchman community being like a hidden asset, if you will, in these days. So the Watchman community has been ignored, has been suffered a lot of pushback, mocking, scoffing, just very difficult to talk to pastors, for example, and to talk to others about what we see and the warnings thereof that we give. And I told, in the process of talking to Lee, I remember saying that we were like the well-trained. So we've been prepared for this season, actually, believe it or not. So I want our audience to hear that, in my opinion, we have been trained for this. Yes, we have been spending years or decades getting familiar with what's happening in the world and the way that it's really working. And we have all of this knowledge. And I think that we're like, our time is coming as watchmen and watchmen right now. That's a super encouraging thing, because here's what's going to happen, I predict, is that when we get these dominoes pushing over, a black swan event, digital IDs, CBDCs, whatever that stuff looks like, war, could be anything really. There's dozens of these little dominoes that they can push over to get the results that they want to. So I think that when pastors and churches start to see this, here's the prediction. The congregation is going to want answers. And here's the problem. The pastors have not been taught eschatology, for the most part, in seminaries. And they have ignored or pushed back. Oh, it's just too controversial. We can't do that. I'm not going to do that. No way am I going to talk about that stuff to my congregation. But the problem is the people will require it of their pastoral staff. And that is when the pastor is going to have this onion peel moment where they're going to say, uh-oh, I have probably miscalculated, misjudged this stuff. It's actually happening, and I don't know what to do. And that's true. They're not going to have the years and years and years of background in all of the things that the Watchman community knows. And so what's going to happen, in my opinion, and my hope and my prayer, is that there's going to be this amazing intersection that is between the pastoral staff of churches locally and the Watchman community. I bet you that there are, in the spectrum of the callings and skills and abilities in every single church, there's probably at least one watchman or watchwoman there. It's just part of the body of Christ. There's a distribution of these amazing people. I count myself as one for about 8 years now. So I think that what's going to happen is the Watchman community will stand up and they'll say, I know what's happening. And then all of a sudden you're going to have this shunted over private conversation between people that know and those that have to get up to speed quickly so that they can address some of the things from the platform. Does this make sense?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And so I think the warning here to the Watchman community is, look, I feel like I'm battered all the time. I just got a fun thing from Facebook that revoked my last post on the best practices on AI intrusion where I featured Zoom. That was taken down in 2 hours. So it's happening, all of this stuff. So it's just, I think that we realize that there's this opportunity to share in a spirit of love and concern. And my caution is because I feel that surge of frustration and somewhat anger. Like, why didn't we have this discussion 4 years ago when we went through the other thing? And look at all the time that was wasted. You know, you can go on and on. You can have this little conversation in your head. You've got to take authority over that conversation. That is a foothold for the enemy. Don't go there. We have to put our boots on, and we absolutely have to speak the truth in love, and to do so in such kindness. We are not going to back up the dump truck and say, all right, Pastor, you ready for this? Look at what I've learned in the last 8 years of my case. Bam, here it is. I'm just dumping it on you. Well, can't do that. We have to meet our pastoral team, our staffs, where they are with what they know and at the pace that they can absorb it. Because none of us got to this point as the Watchman community without time and maturity and discernment and clarity that's come over the years. And I know that I'm not the Watchman that I was 8 years ago. I'm more seasoned now, if you will. There's battle scars to prove all that. But the encouragement is for, the Watchman community is just hang in there. Keep doing what you are doing. Your time is coming.
Amen.
Hey, Pete, what do you think?
We're talking about encouragement, Pete. I wasn't sure if you were on at that time.
Yeah, he got back in.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
I know you talk about it too.
A couple of things, and it's going to sound a little weird at first, but I was mentioning earlier regarding warfare how everything is becoming very decentralized, and you don't mass your forces anywhere. Yet when we see the battle of Gog and Magog in Ezekiel 38, they're massing their forces. When you look at the Armageddon, they're massing their forces. Something that I think this technology is going to go to a point, and then it's going to meet the divine retaining wall that God sets up and says, okay, no more of this. So there's that in the sense that God is still on the throne. He's still in control. He sits in the heavens. He laughs at these folks who are trying to throw their chains off and try to overthrow the throne of God. And I think that day is coming. It is going to be around long enough to ensnare the world, but the church is going to be removed prior, in my opinion. And but nevertheless, we are, like Scott said, we're the ones paying attention. And I was watching a program earlier with Brandon Holthouse and Caroline Glick, and she was like, well, I didn't know how much if your audience was up to speed on stuff with Israel. And he goes, oh, we're very up to speed. And I would like to think that most of the Watchman community is very up to speed on most of the pressing issues of our day, whether it's technology or whether it's Israel, whether it's the rush to globalism or the rising technocracy. All of these things have been topics of discussion for many years for most everybody in the Watchman community. And I think that's one of the great blessings is that God has given us Bible prophecy so that when these things start to come to pass, that'll just embolden our faith because we know that God has already told these things ahead of time. So that would be my encouragement.
And the coolest part, I think, in my opinion, Pete, is that there's selective, reading in. I mean, you cannot read. I just did my last semester of my Bible study was the end times and the epistles, and the letters to the churches. And it's full. It's full of stuff. You'd have to be willfully ignoring, 2 Timothy 3 and other passages, not to mention all the rapture ones and the 1 Corinthians 15, all of that, John 14. So to me, it's like all we have to do is open up and point to the word of God. That is the authority. See this? See what it says? this is what we're going through right now. And I think that's the beauty of it. The Lord has paved the way for us to have that future conversation when our pastors are ready for it. I'm hopeful. Okay. But I also at the same time know how we work. At COVID, we lost half of our church membership at that time. And that was the winnowing fork that separated those that wanted an escape, an excuse to leave. They left. But it tightened down and improved the veracity and intensity and intentionality of the remnant. And we're probably going to have another one of those winnowing forks. And it's just something that we have to be prepared for.
Yeah. Hey, Scott, so let's pivot over to one of the articles you suggested we talk about was a light-based computer. And probably
this is
light-based
fascinating.
computer, quantum computing, and how fast this stuff is going to go. So by the way, I have a friend who's kind of a AI insider, and he just says, we don't know everything. We really don't understand everything that's going on in the industry, and it's going very, very quickly. And you see these, at least on the public side, but I'm sure there's a lot going on in the private, these partnerships and agreements being made between different companies. So now now Scott's going to tell us about the light-based computer.
Yeah, it's called photonics. Instead of using electrical signals that go through a conductive metal, okay, on a silicon chip, they're using photons instead. And I did some research on this, and the first major application of this, which is currently underway, is network, like routers and things like that, that connect all these servers that you see in the data centers. And when you look at the pictures, there's hundreds of them. I think, I can't remember how many server racks, the one that Elon Musk built in that building in Nashville. Wasn't that in Nashville, Patrick?
It
Memphis.
was in Memphis.
Yeah, Memphis. There you go. Yeah, but there's hundreds of these cases, and the cases have slots that you can slide in these server units. Okay, and on the back plane, there's all these fiber optic cables that come out. And one of the biggest innovations that NVIDIA has done, I think it's called InfiniBand, which uses fiber optics to push unbelievably large pipeline of data so that the servers are so sophisticated that they present themselves as one memory, addressable memory space. Now that is impressive, to see it that way. But photonics is, instead of pushing, and we're at the limit of physics. That's why Moore's law has slowed down. We can't get the miniaturization of the chips small enough now, which I think are 4 nanometers right now, to actually push the electrical charge down, the plate of the silicon, so that it continues to have increased performance year after year, iteration after iteration of their chip designs. So what do? Well, quantum is one side of that, but photonics is the other. So I found out that in terms of electrical impedance, and which generates heat, which is why you need all the air conditioning and power requirements of a data center, the photonic-based chips are supposed to be 10 to 100 times more efficient from an energy point of view. And this is something, Patrick, that, when we talk about the future architecture of these data centers, it may not require as much power as it does today. But again, we're talking maybe a few years away from now. It's not yet. They don't have them completely. These are experimental lab issues right here. There's a picture of what a server cluster looks like. And so the photonics is a breakthrough, and it's just as big of a breakthrough as quantum is. And I can't remember, was it you, Pete, that brought up an article about quantum and the error correction? Did you bring that up, or was it Britt?
Maybe Britt.
Okay. Well, I could speak to that maybe. So what's happening, they have decided, by the way, AI was just used to squeeze another 6% improvement in efficiency with, I think it was Google's quantum computers. So AI has already calculated and given the scientists their improved algorithms that made it 6% more efficient, just like that. Bang, done. So a lot of innovation there. But yeah, I think that quantum is where you have this state that's in between. You have in a normal classical chip, you've got a binary system. It's on or off. But in quantum, you have on or off, but you also have the in between. And that's where you get into quantum entanglement and other esoteric terms like that. And they've always had a struggle with error correction, where I mean, we're talking physics that is so strange at basically 0 Kelvin. They're super cold. It's colder than space, actually, in these supercomputers. And they basically have said that it gets destabilized, because if you have an atom that is on or off, and then sometimes in between, it phase shifts, then it's through space-time. It's like through fabric of space-time. It is literally jaw-dropping how it actually works. But the thing is, the errors make it, you can't adopt a computer that's creating false information mathematically and otherwise. But they've used this error correction technology. This was late last year, probably Q3, Q4, where they have decided to align checkpoint, things that check for the integrity of the state of the quantum chips in a way that has improved the reliability of these chips on orders of magnitude now. And so the photonic development and the quantum efficiency and the error correction, we are probably just, I would almost be willing to say that in a year or two, basically unlimited compute. It's just hard to see how far this could go. It'll go very far, I think.
Yeah. Patrick, any thoughts?
No, not really. The promise of light computers is just huge. It also it changes the way that the computer can sense the state of a bit, and it's kind of a difficult thing to explain, but the processing takes place as the light streams from one place to another. That makes it just insanely fast. So where will it go? Who knows? We know that the software, the engineering of the hardware is all racing forward. That's a given. There's going to be breakthroughs on all fronts. And where will be in the end? I kind of think I'm thinking about the Tower of Babel. How high can they build it? But they're not done. Obviously, there's lots of mileage that they can achieve with all the tools they have right now. Crazy.
At least we know, like in connection with the Tower of Babel, that if I understand the narrative correctly, God intervened before they got it finished.
That's right.
I agree with this. I think it's going to happen.
And I think I certainly think this is what's setting up again.
You could take that another step, though, too, to medicine and the AlphaFold, the way that they're folding proteins to discover new drug therapies, the way that they are analyzing diseases. I remember just seeing something about tailor-made vaccines. That was at the Stargate announcement. Remember that, John? where one of
Right.
the things that
Yeah.
Larry Ellison was saying is we'll have custom tailored mRNA vaccines that will specifically target for your genome that you personally have. Scott Townsend, take this and you'll be done with that disease. That's
Yeah.
one of the things they're
I
working
don't
on.
know if, I'm not a doctor, but I can pretend to play one, I guess. But, I don't know that Larry Ellison was entirely accurate. I do know that there's tremendous stuff going on in healthcare. I mentioned Saudi Arabia, NEOM, and what they're doing. And Saudi Arabia has been at the forefront of a lot of this through its financial investment, Future Investment Initiative Institute, which is like a Davos in the desert, they call it. And they're pushing healthcare. I mean, and it's like, look, you're all unique and we can run this through AI and we can figure out what specific treatment you might need for a particular health problem. And in a world that's rapidly aging, I was reading some demographics today about South Korea has the worst female fertility rate in the world. And they have cities in South Korea now that have 25% of the people are over the age of 65. They're not going to have babies. That country will collapse. China will, if we're around long enough, China will collapse, as will a bunch of other countries. And so that the specter or the promise of healthcare, I guess it is a specter and a promise at the same time, that will be that's what they're using to sell this. If you remember back when they did, I think it was on 60 Minutes, they interviewed one of the guys that was with, I don't know if it was DeepMind or something, and they had figured out a way to do the three-dimensional structural of biological proteins. And they said it used to take
AlphaFold at Google. Right?
Okay, yeah. So it used to take a PhD scientist 5 years to figure out the 3D structure of one protein. And I think there's a couple 100,000 of these. And once they figured it out, they were able to do all of them in a few weeks. So 1 billion years of PhD research time was whittled down to a few weeks. It's
Anybody
insane.
else think about the typology of the last time that human DNA was corrupted in Genesis 6? There's a precedent for what I think is going to happen, and that is, I think it was you, Patrick, that said, we're going to be evacuated before it gets to the point where DNA is threatened, human DNA. And so I think that as we see these things, that's another signal to me that, wow, we got to be close, because they're mucking around with this stuff. And then you got Bill Gates shooting off the mouth again, doing all these backroom 3-hour meetings with Trump and everything. It's very, very sobering to see some of the stuff that's going on probably behind the scenes with that.
Yeah.
But the Lord will not allow the human genome to be contaminated like that. It's a different thing when we're gone. The mark of the beast will likely have something in it. I am one of those proponents that think that there's a DNA thing in the mark that would make mankind irredeemable. To me, it just seems very logical that that's probably true.
Yeah, Doug Camp's written on that extensively. Corrupting. Yeah, I think he's got 3 volumes out on corrupting the image, and they're pretty good. Whether you agree with his conclusions or not, I think it's worth reading them. Doug Camp. So, okay, so let's shift a little bit. So I get ads all the time. Use this. It must be reading my mind that I have a inbox or inboxes and some of my email accounts that are totally out of control. And so here's a new AI tool that will help you winnow down all of the junk in your inbox, and your life will be better. So what what practical steps, what should we do, not do with regard to these AI tools that are being shoved in our face all the time?
I will just very briefly say that I'm speaking to this. We've been talking for 18 months about developing a best practices for how to guard against AI, intrusion in our lives. And I've been documenting this. I have a weekly Substack at iamawatchman.substack.com where I have this best practice. The first thing that I did was on Microsoft Recall. And then after that, I did it on Windows Update and how to know if you have Recall enabled or not. So there's a spoiler alert on that second episode. There's the command you use on a Windows computer that will tell you what the status of Recall is for your computer. And last week I did it on, I can't even remember right now. It's so, anyway, I'm starting to address this. Tonight I will be releasing one for tomorrow on Adobe Acrobat. And so these are ways that I'm trying to help educate our audience and others about how to defend against a lot of this stuff right now.
Yeah. Pete, do you use AI, or what are your thoughts on what we should do and not do?
Yeah, I use it a little bit for mostly just compiling information. But obviously, I just the other day I typed in who was going to win the Super Bowl ahead of time, and it gave me this like crazy 27-24 win by the Chiefs or whatever. So obviously, it doesn't know. It's very limited in also what it can predict. But I feel like there's it's like everything else. It's a healthy balance. For me, like if I look at Google search, or any kind of search engine, I mean, really the AI is just a little bit, to me, more personally tailored, and it's not going to give you a bunch of links. It's going to just give you the answer that you're looking for rather than just throwing up, 30 links on a page that 29 have nothing to do with what you're really looking for. Because those things can be obviously rigged in the algorithms to lean one direction or the other, politically speaking. I think the danger for me, the biggest danger for AI isn't necessarily the warfare component of it. It's going to be the religious component of it. So when people when this thing keeps getting faster and faster and more powerful, I think there's going to be a huge jump for the younger generation to begin treating this thing like it's some kind of a deity, because they're gonna, these Jesus apps and all the Jesus AI and all the, I'm sure you can get that will be paired up with an assistant like a Jarvis that you can get your own kind of Jarvis kind of thing, and that thing is going to begin whispering. So I think right at the stage where we are right now, it's still very much in the infantile range. I mean, it's quickly growing into toddler and quickly growing in, but I don't think we've seen exactly how terrifying it is going to be just yet, because I think that it's the growth of it's going to be so exponential that it's going to be shooting things out to new technologies, new games, new types of digital platforms, all kind of new things. If you go on YouTube now and you watch one video, you say, oh, that looks interesting, I'm going to watch it, and you get about 5 minutes into it and you realize it's an AI generated video. That's because they'll bring up a topic and then they'll make it sound like it's super important, and then they'll go back and talk about something else, and then they'll come back, and they don't really there's just kind of you can tell there's a cadence to how they present information. So right now it's still pretty obvious, but I fear that the deep fakes and all that other stuff is going to continue to get exponentially more deceptive, to the point we're not going to really understand what's real or what's not real, and there's going to have to be some type of way to validate that. When John, when you began to say, what, a couple of years ago, that this prophecy update has not been augmented by AI, I used to laugh at that.
Generative
I thought,
AI was
it's so
not
silly.
used in the preparation of this update.
Brilliant.
I thought you were being silly, but then I was like, oh my goodness, yeah. And then I heard about pastors like preparing their whole sermons and stuff off of that. I was like, good grief. So I do think that it's dangerous. We're leaving complete safety right now. We're kind of getting to treading some murky waters, but I think what's coming, and I think within a year or two or less, we're going to see this rapid development of AI, and it's going to just get exponentially harder and harder to differentiate between what's real and what's not real. And when that transitions into some type of a religion or some kind of a belief system, I think that's when it starts getting very, very insane. And as bad as the military components of AI and all of the implications of, Skynet, if you want to call it that, all of that, those implications are terrifying. I think the religious component is going to be even far graver.
Hey, John. John, we should probably develop this a little bit, because
Sure.
just recently, President Trump has established an office, a faith office in the White House.
Right.
It's going to be headed by Paula White Cain, and how it will be staffed, I do not know, but they're saying basically they're going to.
One of the other people is sort of I would describe her as sort of leaning ecumenical. Is one of the other people who will be in the office as well.
You're
Okay,
talking about Paula or somebody else?
Whoever, I can't remember her name, who's working with Paula in the office.
Okay. So whoever it is, this is going to be a unconstitutional act, I believe, to establish a particular religion from the point of view of the government. And we need probably to be cautious about this, because they, on one hand, they say, well, we're going to protect Christians across the country. We've had a lot of persecution, no doubt, in the last 4 years. But they say this is going to all change now. And the lady that's going to run this department, Paula White Cain, she's been with Trump as his spiritual advisor for a long time, at least 6 years now, or maybe more. And she hails, or she comes from, the NAR perspective. That's the new I can't say the word.
Apostolic Reformation.
Exactly. And so this is kind of an aberrant teaching, biblically speaking, on the mandate, the Christian mandate to take over certain centers of society for Christ, and that includes the government.
Yeah.
So this is going to be disturbing. It has nothing to do with AI for sure, but this is something that Christians should be acutely aware of, because if this thing gets traction and she gets the megaphone at this point to broadcast stuff to the Christian community, especially, there's going to be a slew of Christians who chase after her and her doctrine, and it will not end well for them, I do not think. So I put that warning out, and that's being a watchman at this point, I realize, but this could be very serious for many Christians who follow after this idea that Christ, somehow they're going to bring the kingdom of God to earth, conquer all these centers of power for Christ on earth, and then Christ will return for the church. This is crazy thinking, and it just doesn't jive with biblical Christianity, in my opinion.
Yeah, when it first came out, I was it's sort of violating one of my personal rules about trying to win an argument on the internet. And it doesn't usually happen, even for lawyers. So I think that's because in a courtroom, at least, the judge is theoretically accountable to somebody, but on the internet, nobody's accountable to an overarching system of thought. But so the way it first came down, the way it was presented was, hey, I'm starting a task force to protect Christians from discrimination and um, and persecution. You know, that they were targeted during the last years of the Biden administration. It actually started during the first 2 terms of the Obama administration through the tax code and tax department. So, you know, we're all for that. But I agree with you, Patrick, that now she's appointed to this faith office to sort of determine how things are going. So there was nothing in the original thing that came out that she was going to be determining what is correct doctrine. And should she be doing that in a government office, it's blatantly unconstitutional.
Yeah.
And wrong. And we need to stand up and resist that and call the White House and tell them to stop it. But, you know, Paula White has many, many problems. I think her third husband is Jonathan Cain from the rock group Journey, who wrote or co-wrote the famous song "Don't Stop Believing." And so I was kind of joking with somebody the other day, and I thought, well, so now is "Don't Stop Believing" going to start appearing on the worship team list of acceptable songs? You know, it will become a worship anthem. But I think it's bad. Believe me, I have videos of her with Mother Moon, Some Young Moon's mother, you know, the Mooney group. She's been at that. She gets paid. And if you've ever watched the videos of that, they're just really creepy. But, you know, other people have appeared at them too, like Mike Pence, Mike Pompeo, and maybe even Trump. I don't know. I'm pretty sure Trump went to one of them as well. And I assume that they just got a big contribution to do it. But, you know, all of this is very concerning. And it's something that I think we as watchmen for, you know, what's happening in the end times, you know, one of the overarching thing Jesus said was take heed that no man deceive you. So we need to be watching out for that.
Agreed. Yeah.
So, Scott, I want to ask you a quick question. We try to keep these things to a couple hours, and it looks like we're bumping up against that. So, you've mentioned in the past, I don't know if we've really gone into it enough, things like, and I know you sent us this article about OpenAI has introduced a novel agentic system called Operator. Kind of explain that to us. And I think Microsoft is also doing something like that with cloning your computer. In fact, I saw a very good video by, he's Chinese, but he's American Chinese. And he was talking about the fact that we have all these things on our computers to encrypt our data, right? Protect our data. But now with like iPhone and Microsoft, and I assume this OpenAI thing, they just grab it off your screen before it gets to your encrypted part of your computer. Am I incorrect
not
in
yet,
that?
John,
Okay.
not yet. So this is a little bit of a fine detail right here, but what OpenAI just released a week ago, I think it was, is a new product called Desktop. And what it does is been done for a long time, a couple decades now. What it does is it scrapes the web, okay? But so in the Desktop app that you get from OpenAI, it has the ability to be agentic. That's what the term is when you have an AI agent. The agent does things as a proxy for you. So you don't have to be personally involved in that anymore. Okay, so we've talked about agentic frameworks. The difference is when you're talking to a chatbot, you are tied to that conversation. Stop talking, the chatbot stops. Okay. On the agentic side, what's going to happen and is happening now is you command the AI agent, go do this for me. and you unplug from that, and now it works. Okay, not just one instance of the agent, but potentially tens or hundreds, depending what your budget is for it. So you can have an army of these AI agents out there doing things on your behalf. And so one of the things that desktop does, this new feature from OpenAI, is it allows you to tell the agent in the desktop, go, I want to make reservations at this 3 Michelin star restaurant, let's say. Maybe the French Laundry up in Napa somewhere. And what happens is there's a internal browser session that happens. It's not on your computer, okay? It's in a virtualized container that has a browser that's scraping and moving the mouse, typing in the keyboard. So the AI agent is actually performing as a human would be doing in order to go find, where do I go get the tickets from? Do I go to the restaurants thing? Do I go to, what's that restaurant app? I can't remember, table
Yelp.
something.
Yelp. Yeah,
Yelp
exactly.
Open
table, there's
table,
a table.
open table.
Yeah,
yeah.
Open table, yeah. So probably use Open Table for that, or make a
Yep,
phone
yep.
call, because it can project a voice. Remember, Google's been demoing voice-based interactions
Mhm.
for 3 years now.
Yes.
So it's a voice. Hey, I need to make a reservation for, I want to go at this time. What's your first available? Now you're probably 6 months out, maybe a year out at the French Laundry, but just work with me on this. And then that agent is or the operator or the receptionist at that restaurant begins interacting on voice. But recently, the desktop thing isn't using voice; it's using web screens and being able to navigate to the website autonomously, look for the reservation link autonomously. It scans and scrapes the website to find out where do you click to get the reservation screen. And then from there, it sees, oh, there's a calendar entry. So I'm going to pick the thing and I'm going to find out what their first available date is. You give it the number of people that you were told to go do. You enter, you enter maybe your credit card information or something like that in order to book it. So that's what OpenAI has done. Now it's shaky. I saw the launch demo and it wasn't operating flawlessly. And that's exactly what happens. These are brand new technologies, but it will only get better. So that is what's happening right there. But it is not yet on your computer doing it. It's using a virtualized container to do it. One of the things that's in my pipeline for researching is a real problem when you're using other AI tooling, agentic tooling. Claude has one where it's actually operating on your computer, and that's for a developer to do that, a software developer. And I'm going to explore that topic in one of my upcoming Substack articles, because we have to be very, very careful, because what happens there is the AI has the ability to run commands directly on your operating system. That's a lot more of a problem, I think.
yeah.
So that's the nutshell, John.
Yeah. Let me introduce another product from OpenAI. This dovetails with what you're saying, and that has the new product that Sam Altman just announced 2 or 3 days ago, called OpenAI Gov. G-O-V. That's the name of the product. You can search it on the internet and find out what I'm talking about. But it's a special iteration of OpenAI, the latest model that can be used by the government securely, they say, in the cloud with using Microsoft's Azure system that's supposed to protect sensitive government data. And basically, they're turning this loose now to the government to use wherever they want to use it. They're going to pay for it, I'm sure, through the nose. But they're also rolling it out to state governments as well. OpenAI space Gov, G-O-V. This is going to be ugly. There you go. There it is.
Yeah, you can't make this stuff up, guys. I mean, it's just mind blowing to me.
But this is the system that will be implemented undoubtedly in our government to do all the things automatically that can be done by people, but nevertheless, it'll be the AI that's doing it and taking the credit or the punishment or whatever.
So, I mean, but look, I mean, so if you read that Substack article that I referenced earlier called Override, and then the ones that have followed it over the last few days, they're using this. I'm sure that Elon Musk's team is one of the ones that are using this, and they're unpacking things. And these young guys went in there with all of these algorithms and everything, and they really unpacked a lot of money flows. I mean, and we don't want people to be corrupt. We want to root out corruption, right? I mean, it's hard to convince people that that's a very, very bad thing. The question is, where do you put the brakes on them? By the way, Trump just announced he's coming out tomorrow, and he's going to expose all these people who've gotten billions of dollars, and he's going to name names. So we're living in a reality show now, I think.
We are. That's a good way to put it, actually. Yeah.
So, well, anyway, look, I think we'll wrap it up. So just a couple of, we'll do another one of these. We'll start scheduling it. We try to do them every 4 weeks or so at most. And maybe we just need to have an open mic night sometime. And just read through our Twitter and Facebook feeds to get subjects to talk about. It's crazy. So I just want to remind everybody. So
we may do an AMA, John. Ask Me Anything, where we serve as the panel for people coming in with comments.
Yeah, that would be a good idea. So
I have an AI for that.
No.
We will be your AI. You don't need any other AI.
Oh no, you guys.
So anyway, I appreciate everybody. I apologize for the problems on the FBC YouTube channel at the beginning. I just want to remind you of a couple things. I'm going to be doing another roundtable on Israel, Zionism, and anti-Semitism at 10 a.m. Eastern tomorrow morning. And that'll be with me, Brian Schrager from Israel, Dexter Van Zyl from Middle East Forum, and Jim Fletcher. So if you want to watch that, and this one will be reposted, that one will be live. It'll also be reposted. I'm going to do Kurt Reed's program tomorrow. I think that's at 3:00 Eastern. So, and I'm actually going to be at Calvary Chapel, the Harbor again on April 29th in California. So anyway, and I know we all have a lot of things coming up, so we do appreciate you taking the time to come, and we just pray, what's the operative term? We're to be wise as serpents, harmless as doves, and always stand for the truth. And it's going to be an interesting ride till we're out of here one way or the other. So any other thoughts, guys? I'll give you a couple minutes here, and anything you want to wrap up with?
No, I'm glad to be here. Sorry for all my spotty internet. It's bad at night because everybody in the neighborhood, everybody's getting on the limited towers that we have. So, but just I know things are moving fast. Just keep your head on a swivel, keep looking up, and keep your hope and faith in Christ. And I'm telling you, it doesn't matter what they come out with. Christ, God has seen the end from the beginning. None of this is a surprise to him. And so we have the Holy Spirit indwelling us, who is far more powerful than anything in this world has. So thank you, and God bless.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, all of the people who are listening tonight, every one of you, you got here by, in my opinion, you got here by divine appointment. However you got here, it doesn't matter. You got here and you listened to this, what we had to say, and you're a Christian. At this point, you're accountable for what you heard. Use it. Take responsibility for it. Don't just go away and say, oh, I listened to a cool podcast, you know, or whatever, and you just go in one ear and out the other. Don't do that. Take responsibility for the information and use it to your advantage to bail people out of this world, get their head, maybe they're Christians, maybe they're not Christians. But nevertheless, you're the one that has the information now to go and be salt and light for these people who don't have a clue. Especially so many Christians in the same boat. You have the information now that you can use. Go for it.
Amen to that. Yeah, I just want to say that, you know, it's hard to hear a lot of this stuff, and our perspective on fear and anxiety and how we manage that, and how do we focus on, as we see this stuff happening, we're commanded to encourage one another, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Don't break fellowship. If you're not in a church, I would actually challenge you on that. The church may not be perfect. It may not be eschatologically sensitive, as I like to call it, but you have to have fellowship with other believers. Start a Bible study in your home. Help spread, to Patrick's point, be part of the solution. If you're a watchman or watchwoman, you should think about multiplying yourself and your influence to others in your church or Bible study. And I think that now's the time. We've been appointed for this season. We've been prepared for this as the community of watchmen and watchwomen, and it's just go time. Everything we do now matters, everything. And we are sprinting. It's not time to walk or lollygag or get distracted or to indulge in the world, or to not take our calling to be the bride of Christ, spotless and pure. We can't take that for granted. It's not an automatic thing. We have to work on that. We have to take authority over the sin patterns of our life to work on acts of sanctification. It's very, very important that we finish well. And just a final thought, it's often, you know, just basic on myself. I'm fatigued. You know, we just can't do all this stuff all the time. It's very tiring. And, you know, it's tempting to cross the finish line as a watchman or watchwoman by yourself, just collapse over the finish line. But that's actually not the right model. We should have people in tow with us, that are with us, that we've helped. We're all moving in the same direction. We're not going to finish the finish line by ourselves. We're going to have a bunch of people in tow. That's basically what being about the Father's business means. It means what Patrick was saying. Let's get out there. Let's do a good job of representing what's happening in this world, and to do it in a loving and kind way.
Good thoughts. Appreciate it all. Good night, everyone. Patrick and Scott, if you would just hang on for just a minute, I'll say goodbye to you on site. Again, just check our channels for things that I have coming up, and keep Britt Gillette in your prayers that he recovers quickly. Thank you all. Good night, everyone.